The leather reins bit into Lillian Lancaster's palms as she guided the borrowed wagon down the dusty trail toward San Antonio, Texas. Her silk undergarments chafing beneath the rough cotton dress she had purchased from a general store 2 towns back. It was April 1878, and the daughter of railroad magnate Thomas Lancaster had done something unthinkable. She had run away from her own engagement party in Philadelphia, stolen aboard a westbound train, and now found herself approaching the wild frontier town with nothing but a small carpetbag of deliberately plain clothing and exactly $3 to her name. The sun beat down mercilessly on the Texas landscape, so different from the manicured gardens and cobblestone streets of her childhood. Lillian had left behind a life of crystal chandeliers, imported French champagne, and a fiancé she barely knew, but was expected to marry for the sake of merging 2 industrial empires. Gerald Morrison was everything her father wanted in a son-in-law: wealthy, well-connected, and completely devoid of warmth. When he had looked at her during their courtship, she had seen only calculation in his eyes, as if she were another asset to be acquired rather than a woman with her own hopes and dreams. So she had fled, trading her pearl-buttoned gowns for simple calico, her elaborate hairstyles for a single practical braid, and her life of luxury for the unknown. She wanted to discover what it meant to be valued for herself rather than her family name or her father's fortune. She wanted to know if anyone could love Lillian the woman, rather than Lillian Lancaster the heiress. The wagon wheels creaked as she entered San Antonio, a bustling frontier town of about 20,000 souls, where Spanish missions stood alongside newer American buildings, and where English, Spanish, and German could be heard in equal measure on the streets. Cowboys drove cattle through the main thoroughfares, raising clouds of dust that coated everything. Women in simple dresses hurried along wooden sidewalks with baskets of goods. Saloons advertised whiskey and card games, while the more respectable establishments offered dry goods, tools, and provisions for the ranchers and farmers who supplied the town's lifeblood. Lillian guided the wagon to a livery stable, where a weathered man with kind eyes took the reins. She had borrowed the wagon from a widow in the last town, promising to send it back with a stage driver, and now she kept that promise by paying the man to ensure its return. "New in town, miss?" the stable keeper asked, eyeing her worn dress and dusty bonnet. "Yes, sir. I am looking for work." "Might you know of any positions available?" He scratched his graying beard. "Well now, the boarding house on Commerce Street usually needs help. Mrs. Chen runs it. She is a fair woman, though she works her girls hard. Tell her Harlan from the livery sent you." Lillian thanked him and made her way through the crowded streets, dodging cowboys on horseback and trying not to stare at everything around her. This world was so vibrantly alive, so utterly different from the suffocating propriety of Philadelphia society. Here, people spoke plainly, moved with purpose, and seemed to care little for the elaborate social rituals she had been trained in since childhood. The boarding house was a 2-story wooden structure with a covered porch and neat white curtains in the windows. Lillian climbed the steps and knocked on the door, her heart hammering. A Chinese woman in her 40s opened it, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of Lillian's appearance. "Yes, Mrs. Chen. Harlan at the livery suggested I inquire about work. I can cook, clean, and manage accounts." "I am a hard worker and I need a position urgently." Mrs. Chen's expression remained neutral. "You run from something." The directness caught Lillian off guard, but she appreciated it. "Yes, madam, a life that was not my own. A man, a marriage I did not want." Mrs. Chen nodded slowly. "I need help with cooking and cleaning. Room and board plus $2 a week. You work 6 days, Sunday free for church or rest. No drinking, no men in your room, no stealing. You break rules, you leave same day. Understand? Yes, madam, thank you. What is your name? Lillian hesitated only a moment. Lily Lawson. Come, I show you room. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the back garden. To Lillian, who had grown up in a mansion with 12 bedrooms, it was perfect. It was hers, earned by her own merit, and that made it more valuable than all the luxury she had left behind. She began work immediately, helping Mrs. Chen prepare the evening meal for the boarders. There were 10 rooms, mostly occupied by cowboys, ranch hands, and a few traveling merchants. Mrs. Chen ran a respectable establishment, and she made it clear that any man who disrespected her girls would find himself on the street before he could blink. That evening, as Lillian served stew and cornbread to the hungry men gathered around the long dining table, she felt their curious glances. She kept her eyes down, playing the part of a modest working girl, though inside her heart raced with excitement. She was truly on her own, making her own way, and despite the hard work and humble circumstances, she felt more alive than she ever had in her father's mansion. 3 weeks passed in a blur of cooking, cleaning, and learning the rhythms of frontier life. Lillian discovered muscles she never knew she had, and her soft hands developed calluses from scrubbing floors and hauling water. She learned to build fires, to stretch cheap cuts of meat into hearty meals, and to navigate the complex social world of a boarding house where men from all walks of life intersected. Mrs. Chen proved to be an excellent teacher, and though she rarely smiled, Lillian sensed a deep kindness beneath her stern exterior. The other girl who worked at the boarding house, a German immigrant named Greta, became something of a friend, teaching Lillian the shortcuts and secrets that made the work more bearable. On a hot afternoon in May, Mrs. Chen asked Lillian to walk to the general store to purchase supplies. The list was long: flour, sugar, salt, coffee, and various other necessities. Lillian took the money pouch, feeling the weight of responsibility, and set out into the dusty streets. The general store was crowded with ranch hands buying supplies before heading back to their spreads. Lillian moved through the narrow aisles, checking items off the list, when she heard a commotion near the front counter. "I am telling you, Gus, I will pay you next week when we sell the herd. We have been doing business for 5 years. When have I ever failed to settle my accounts?" The voice was deep and warm, with a slight drawl that marked the speaker as a Texan born and bred. Lillian glanced over and saw a tall man in dusty denim and a worn hat arguing with the storekeeper. The cowboy was perhaps 26 or 27, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. His face was honest and open, and even from a distance, Lillian could see the frustration in his stance. "Things have changed, Kyle," the storekeeper said, his voice apologetic but firm. "Mr. Henderson bought out my store last month. He requires cash payment for all purchases over $10. I do not make the rules anymore. I only need $20 worth of supplies to get through until we drive the cattle to market. Surely Henderson can extend credit to an established customer." "Sorry, Kyle. My hands are tied." The cowboy named Kyle ran a hand through his hair, clearly at a loss. Lillian watched as he counted the coins in his pocket, his shoulders slumping when he realized he did not have enough. He began putting items back, his jaw tight with what she recognized as pride struggling against necessity. Something about his decency, his obvious honesty and frustration, moved Lillian. Here was a man who was not trying to cheat or intimidate, just trying to run his ranch and feed his workers. She made a decision that would have horrified her father. "Excuse me," she said, stepping forward. Both men turned to look at her. I could not help but overhear. I might be able to help. Kyle's eyes met hers for the first time, and Lillian felt something shift in her chest. His eyes were gray like a winter sky, and they held a depth of character that made Gerald Morrison's calculating gaze seem shallow and cold by comparison. "Madam, I appreciate the thought, but I could not accept charity from a stranger," Kyle said, his voice polite but firm. "It would not be charity. It would be a loan. You said you will be paid when you sell your herd. I could loan you the $20 and you could repay me with interest when you have the funds." Kyle studied her, clearly trying to reconcile her worn dress and work-roughened hands with her educated speech and confident manner. "That is kind of you, Miss Lawson. Lily Lawson. Miss Lawson. But I could not take money from a working woman. It would not be right." "I am offering a business arrangement, sir, not charity. You need supplies. I have a small amount saved, and when you repay me with interest, I will have helped myself as much as I helped you." This was not entirely true, as the money she was offering was most of her small savings, but something about this honest cowboy made her want to help. The storekeeper, Gus, watched the exchange with interest. Kyle Edwards runs the Double E Ranch about 10 miles north of town. He is as honest as they come. If he says he will pay you back, he will. Kyle looked torn between pride and practicality. Finally, he sighed. "If you are truly willing, Miss Lawson, I would be grateful for the loan. I will repay you $25 within 2 weeks when we sell the herd." "You have my word." Lillian reached into her small purse and counted out the money, her heart beating fast. She was taking a risk, but somehow she knew this man would honor his word. Kyle took the bills with obvious reluctance, his fingers briefly brushing hers, and she felt a spark of electricity at the contact. "Thank you, Miss Lawson. You have saved me from a very difficult situation. My ranch hands need those supplies, and I would have hated to let them down." "You are welcome, Mr. Edwards." "Kyle, please. Mr. Edwards was my father. Then you may call me Lily." He smiled for the first time, and it transformed his face from merely handsome to genuinely beautiful. "Lily, that is a pretty name. It suits you." Lillian felt heat rise to her cheeks and was grateful for the store's dim lighting. Kyle gathered his supplies, paid Gus, and then turned back to her. "I would like to know where I can find you to repay the debt. Do you work in town?" "I work at Mrs. Chen's boarding house on Commerce Street." "I am there most days." "Then I will see you in 2 weeks, if not sooner. Thank you again, Lily." He tipped his hat and left, and Lillian found herself staring after him, her heart doing strange acrobatics in her chest. She forced herself to focus on her own shopping, but her mind kept drifting back to gray eyes and a warm smile. The next 2 weeks passed slowly. Lillian threw herself into her work, trying not to think about Kyle Edwards or whether he would actually return. She told herself it did not matter, that the money was just money, but she knew she was lying to herself. Something about that brief encounter had awakened feelings she had never experienced during all the carefully orchestrated courtships of her Philadelphia life. Greta noticed her distraction and teased her about it. "You are thinking of a man, I can always tell. Who is he?" "No one. Just a cowboy I met at the store." "Just a cowboy," she says, while she stares out the window like a girl in a dime novel. "What is his name?" "Kyle Edwards. Do you know him?" Greta's eyes widened. "Know of him. He runs a ranch north of town. Good reputation. They say he treats his workers fair and keeps his word. Also, they say he is unmarried and quite handsome. No wonder you are distracted." "I am not distracted. I simply loaned him money and am awaiting repayment." "Of course. That is why you have been watching the street every spare moment for 2 weeks." Lillian could not help but laugh. "Am I so obvious?" "Only to someone who has been in love herself. "Do not worry, your secret is safe with me." But Lillian was not sure what secret Greta was keeping. She was not in love. She barely knew Kyle Edwards. Yet she could not deny that she thought about him constantly, wondering about his ranch, his life, whether he thought about her at all. On a Sunday morning, her one day off, Lillian decided to take a walk through town. San Antonio was quieter on Sundays, with many people attending church services. She wandered past the old Spanish missions, marveling at their architecture and history, so different from anything she had known in Philadelphia. She was admiring the facade of Mission San Jose when she heard a familiar voice. "Lily." She turned to find Kyle Edwards standing a few feet away, dressed in clean clothes and holding his hat in his hands. He looked uncertain, almost nervous, and she felt her pulse quicken. "Kyle." "Hello." "I had hoped to find you. I went by the boarding house, but Mrs. Chen said you were out. I wanted to give you this." He pulled an envelope from his pocket and handed it to her. $25 as promised. Thank you again for your trust." Lillian took the envelope, surprised by how disappointed she felt. Of course he had come to repay his debt. That was the only connection between them. What had she expected? "Thank you for honoring your word. Though I must admit, I never doubted you would. That means more to me than you might think. Trust is a valuable commodity, especially when given freely." He hesitated, then added, "I was wondering if you might like to take a walk with me, if you have time, that is, and if it would not be improper." Joy bloomed in Lillian's chest, though she tried to keep her voice casual. "I have time. A walk would be nice." They strolled through the mission grounds, and Kyle proved to be an easy conversationalist. He told her about his ranch, how his father had started it 20 years ago with nothing but determination and a small herd of cattle. When his parents had died in a fever outbreak 5 years ago, Kyle had inherited the ranch and had been working hard to keep it profitable ever since. "It is not an easy life," he admitted. "The weather, the cattle thieves, the fluctuating markets. Some years we barely break even. But it is honest work and it is mine. I could not imagine doing anything else." "You sound like you love it." "I do. There is something about working the land, raising cattle, building something with your own hands. It is satisfying in a way that goes deeper than money." He glanced at her. "What about you? How did you end up in San Antonio, working at a boarding house?" Lillian had prepared for this question, crafting a story that was close enough to the truth to be comfortable. "I grew up back east, but my family fell on hard times. I decided to come west and start fresh, make my own way. That takes courage. A lot of people cannot walk away from what they know, even when it is making them miserable." "Have you ever felt trapped by circumstances, Kyle?" He thought about it. "Once. After my parents died, I was courted by a larger ranching operation. They wanted to buy me out, merge my land with theirs. The money would have set me up for life. I could have moved to a city, lived comfortably without working, but it would have meant giving up everything my father built, everything I believed in. So I said no, and I have never regretted it. Even when times are hard, especially then. The hard times remind me why I made the choice. Because the ranch is mine, the decisions are mine, and the satisfaction of success is mine. No one can take that from me." Lillian felt a profound connection to his words. He understood exactly what she was seeking, even if he did not know her true circumstances. They talked for hours, wandering through the town and down to the San Antonio River, where cottonwood trees provided shade from the afternoon sun. Kyle told her about his childhood, learning to ride before he could walk, helping his father with cattle drives, the first time he had to confront a rustler. She told him carefully edited stories about her life, focusing on her love of reading, her frustration with social expectations, her desire for something more authentic than what she had known. "You are different from most women I have met," Kyle said as they sat on a bench overlooking the river. "You have an education, that is clear from how you speak, but you are not afraid of hard work, and you think about things deeply. I can see it in your eyes." "What do you see in my eyes?" The question was bolder than she intended, but she genuinely wanted to know. He looked at her, really looked at her, and she felt as if he could see straight through to her soul. Strength, intelligence, and something else. A kind of loneliness, as if you are searching for a place where you truly belong. Tears pricked at Lillian's eyes. No one, not in all her years of Philadelphia society, had ever seen her so clearly. "That is exactly what I am searching for. I hope you find it, Lily. You deserve to be happy. So do you, Kyle." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the water flow past, and Lillian felt a peace she had never known. This was what she had been seeking: genuine connection, honest conversation, the feeling of being truly seen and valued for herself. As the afternoon wore on, Kyle reluctantly said he needed to head back to his ranch. "But I would like to see you again if you are willing. Perhaps you could visit the ranch sometime. I would like to show you what I have been talking about. I would like that very much. Next Sunday. I could pick you up at the boarding house in the morning, show you around, and have you back before evening. Mrs. Chen strikes me as the protective type, so I give you my word as a gentleman that I will be perfectly respectable." Lillian laughed. "She is indeed protective, and I appreciate that you understand. Next Sunday would be wonderful." They walked back to the boarding house together, and when they parted, Kyle took her hand and held it for a moment. "Thank you for today, Lily. It has been a long time since I enjoyed anyone's company so much." "I feel the same way." He smiled, tipped his hat, and rode away on his horse, leaving Lillian standing on the porch with her heart full of emotions she was only beginning to understand. The week that followed was the longest of Lillian's life. She worked mechanically, her mind always drifting to Sunday and the ranch visit. Greta continued to tease her, and even Mrs. Chen seemed to notice her distraction, though she said nothing. When Sunday finally arrived, Lillian was awake before dawn, choosing her best simple dress and braiding her hair with extra care. She told herself she was being foolish, that she was just visiting a ranch, but her racing heart knew better. Kyle arrived promptly at 8, driving a clean wagon and looking handsome in his work clothes. Mrs. Chen answered the door and subjected him to a stern interrogation about his intentions and his promise to return Lily safely. Kyle bore it with good humor and impeccable manners, and Lillian could see Mrs. Chen's expression soften slightly. The ride to the Double E Ranch took about 45 minutes, and Kyle used the time to tell her more about the operation. He ran about 200 head of cattle with the help of 3 full-time ranch hands and additional help during drives and busy seasons. The land had been carefully chosen by his father for its access to water and good grazing. When they arrived, Lillian was struck by how neat and well-maintained everything was. The ranch house was modest but solid, built of wood and stone with a wide porch. The barn and outbuildings were in good repair, and the corrals were sturdy. Everything spoke of careful stewardship and pride of ownership. Kyle introduced her to his ranch hands. Tom, a grizzled cowboy in his 50s who had worked for Kyle's father; Miguel, a young vaquero whose family had been in Texas for generations; and Jacob, a former slave who had come to Texas after the war seeking a fresh start. All 3 men treated Kyle with respect that seemed genuinely earned rather than demanded. "Kyle treats us fair," Jacob told her when Kyle was out of earshot. "Pays decent wages, does not ask anything of us he would not do himself. Some ranchers think they are too good to work alongside their hired hands. Not Kyle. He is out here every day doing the same work we do." Kyle gave her a tour of the ranch, showing her the cattle grazing peacefully in the distance, the vegetable garden behind the house that provided fresh food, the workshop where he repaired equipment. He was animated and proud, and she found herself caught up in his enthusiasm. "I know it is not much," he said as they stood on a small rise overlooking the property. "Compared to the big ranches, the Double E is just a small operation. But it is mine, built on honest work and sound principles. Every fence post, every building, represents sweat and determination." "It is wonderful," Lillian said sincerely. "You have every right to be proud. You have built something real here, Kyle, something that matters." He looked at her with such warmth that she felt herself blushing. "You understand. Most women I have met want to talk about moving to a big city, about getting away from ranch life. But you see the value in it. I see the value in honest work and independence. That is what I was seeking when I came west." They ate lunch on the porch, a simple meal of bread, cheese, and cold beef that tasted better than any elaborate dinner Lillian had eaten in Philadelphia. Kyle's housekeeper, an older woman named Rosa, had prepared it and left it for them before visiting her daughter in town. As they ate, Lillian found herself imagining what it would be like to live here, to wake up each morning to the sight of the Texas hills, to work alongside Kyle, to build a life based on genuine partnership rather than social obligation. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. "Can I ask you something personal, Lily?" Kyle said, setting down his plate. "Of course. Why did you really come west? I know you said your family fell on hard times, but there is more to it. I can tell. You do not have to answer if you do not want to, but I feel like there is something you are not telling me." Lillian's heart raced. She wanted to tell him everything, to confess her true identity and her reasons for running away. But fear held her back. What if he felt betrayed by her deception? What if he treated her differently once he knew she was wealthy? What if everything between them was ruined? "You are right," she said slowly. "There is more. I was engaged to be married back east to a man I did not love, chosen by my family for reasons that had nothing to do with my happiness. I could not go through with it, so I ran away. I wanted to discover who I was without all the expectations and obligations. I wanted to be valued for myself, not for what I could bring to a marriage. It was the truth, or most of it." She had simply omitted the scale of her wealth and her family's prominence. Kyle reached across the small table and took her hand. "That took tremendous courage. I am sorry you were put in that position, but I am grateful you made the choice you did. Otherwise, we never would have met." "I am grateful too. Can I be honest with you, Lily? I know we have only known each other a short time, but I feel something when I am with you, something I have never felt before. You are intelligent, kind, brave, and beautiful. When I am with you, I feel like I can be completely myself. I do not have to pretend or put on airs. I can just be Kyle, a simple rancher, and that seems to be enough for you." Lillian's eyes filled with tears. "It is more than enough. You are the most genuine person I have ever met, Kyle. Your honesty, your integrity, your kindness, they shine through in everything you do. When I am with you, I feel the same way, like I can finally be myself. Then I would like to court you properly if you would allow it. I know I do not have much to offer. I am just a cowboy with a small ranch. But I would work hard to make you happy, Lily. I would give you everything I have." This was the moment. Lillian knew she should tell him the truth, should confess her deception before things went any further. But looking into his earnest gray eyes, seeing the vulnerability and hope there, she could not bring herself to risk it. Not yet. Not when she was finally experiencing the kind of genuine affection she had always longed for. "I would be honored to be courted by you, Kyle. And you have more to offer than you realize. You have integrity, kindness, and a good heart. Those are worth more than all the riches in the world." He smiled, and then, very gently, he leaned forward and kissed her. It was soft and sweet, nothing like the proprietary kisses Gerald Morrison had forced on her during their engagement. This kiss felt like a promise, like the beginning of something beautiful and true. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking and laughing, and when Kyle drove her back to town that evening, Lillian felt as if she were floating on air. Over the following weeks, Kyle courted her with an old-fashioned devotion that warmed her heart. He came to town every Sunday to take her on outings, picnics by the river, walks through town, visits to the ranch. He brought her small gifts, wildflowers he had picked, a ribbon he thought would match her eyes, a book of poetry he had ordered from a catalog because she mentioned loving poetry. Lillian fell deeper in love with each passing day. Kyle was everything she had ever wanted in a man: kind, honest, hardworking, and completely genuine. He treated her with respect and affection, never pushing for more than she was ready to give, always conscious of propriety and her reputation. The other boarders noticed their courtship, and there were knowing smiles when Kyle came to call. Mrs. Chen, after her initial suspicion, seemed to approve of him. "He is a good man," she told Lillian one evening. "Not many like him. You are lucky." "I know," Lillian said softly. But as her love for Kyle grew, so did her guilt about the deception. She was living a lie, presenting herself as a poor working girl when she was actually one of the wealthiest young women in Philadelphia. Every time Kyle apologized for not being able to offer her more, every time he worried about providing for her properly, the guilt gnawed at her. She knew she needed to tell him the truth, but she was terrified. What if he felt she had made a fool of him? What if he believed she had been playing a cruel game, testing him like some wealthy person conducting a social experiment? What if it ruined everything between them? Summer turned to fall, and the Texas heat began to ease into more comfortable temperatures. Kyle invited her to help with the cattle drive to market, and though it was unconventional for a woman to participate, Lillian jumped at the chance. She borrowed riding clothes from Greta, and Kyle taught her to ride properly, not the side-saddle style of her Philadelphia lessons, but the practical Western way. The cattle drive was hard, dusty work, but Lillian loved every minute of it. She rode alongside the cowboys, helped cook meals over campfires, and learned the rhythms of managing a herd. Kyle's respect for her grew as he saw her tackle challenges without complaint, and his ranch hands accepted her as one of the crew. On the last night of the drive, as they camped under a sky full of stars, Kyle found her sitting alone by the fire. The other men had turned in for the night, exhausted from the day's work. "You did well," he said, sitting beside her. "I know it was not easy, but you never complained once." "I loved it. Every difficult, dirty minute of it. This is real life, Kyle. This is what I was seeking when I came west. Lily, I need to tell you something." His voice was serious, and she felt a flutter of nervousness. "I am in love with you. I think I have been since that day in the general store when you offered to help a stranger without thinking twice about it. These past months have been the happiest of my life. When I am with you, I feel complete in a way I never have before." Tears streamed down Lillian's face. "I love you too, Kyle, more than I ever thought possible." He pulled a small box from his pocket, and her breath caught. "It is not much. I had it made in town with what little extra money I had from the cattle sale. But I wanted you to have something to show the world that you are mine and I am yours." He opened the box to reveal a simple silver ring with a small turquoise stone. It was nothing like the elaborate diamond engagement ring Gerald Morrison had given her, the one she had left behind in Philadelphia. This ring was modest and simple, but it meant everything because it represented real love. "Lily Lawson, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" I promise I will work every day to make you happy. I cannot offer you luxury or ease, but I can offer you my whole heart and a partnership built on love and respect." This was it. The moment of truth. Lillian knew she could not accept his proposal without telling him the truth. It would not be fair to him to start their marriage based on a lie. "Kyle, before I answer, there is something I need to tell you, something I should have told you months ago." She took a deep breath, her hands trembling. "My name is not really Lily Lawson. It is Lillian Lancaster. My father is Thomas Lancaster, the railroad magnate. I am not a poor working girl. I am one of the wealthiest heiresses in Philadelphia." Kyle's expression shifted from joy to confusion to something unreadable. He pulled back slightly, and Lillian felt her heart breaking. "I did not lie about why I came west," she rushed to explain. "Everything I told you about running from an engagement, wanting to be valued for myself, wanting to find genuine connection, that was all true. I just could not bring myself to tell you about the money. I was afraid you would treat me differently, or think I was playing some kind of game with you." Kyle stood and walked away from the fire, his back to her. Lillian waited, her heart pounding, tears streaming down her face. When he finally turned back, his expression was pained. "You lied to me, Lillian. For months, you let me believe you were someone you are not. I am exactly who you think I am. The money does not change who I am as a person. Does it not? I spent all these months apologizing for not being able to give you more, worried about whether I could provide for you properly, and all along you had more wealth than I could earn in 10 lifetimes. Do you have any idea how that makes me feel? I am sorry. I was wrong not to tell you, but Kyle, none of that money matters to me. I left it all behind because I wanted something real. I wanted to be loved for myself, not for my family's wealth. And you think I would have courted you differently if I had known. You think I am so shallow that your money would have mattered more than who you are. No, I was afraid. Afraid of exactly this reaction. Afraid of losing what we have." Kyle ran his hands through his hair, clearly struggling with his emotions. "I need time to think about this, Lillian. This is not the woman I thought I was falling in love with." "Yes, it is," she said desperately. "I am the same person. Nothing has changed except you know my real name and my background. Everything has changed. You did not trust me enough to tell me the truth. How can I build a life with someone who keeps secrets like that?" He walked away into the darkness, and Lillian collapsed by the fire, sobbing. She had ruined everything. Her fear and her deception had destroyed the one genuine relationship she had ever known. The next morning, the drive continued to the stockyards, but the atmosphere was tense. Kyle was cordial but distant, and Lillian felt the loss like a physical pain. When they reached San Antonio, she left immediately for the boarding house, not knowing what else to do. Mrs. Chen took one look at her face and brought her inside without questions. Lillian poured out the whole story, and the older woman listened silently. "You made mistake, Mrs. Chen said finally. But not unforgivable mistake. You did not lie about important things. You lie about money because you afraid. Now you tell truth. Is hard but is necessary. You give him time. If he truly love you, he will see past anger to what is real. But what if he does not? What if I have lost him forever? Then you learn, you grow, you do better next time. But I think maybe he come around. He is good man. Good men do not give up on love so easy." Lillian wanted to believe her, but as days passed with no word from Kyle, her hope faded. She threw herself into her work, trying to numb the pain with exhaustion. Greta tried to cheer her up, but nothing helped. 2 weeks after the disastrous revelation, a letter arrived at the boarding house addressed to Lillian Lancaster. Mrs. Chen brought it to her with raised eyebrows. "Someone know who you really are." Lillian's hands shook as she opened it. The letter was from her father's attorney. informing her that her father had fallen gravely ill and was asking for her. He had called off the search for her and simply wanted to see his daughter one more time before he died. Lillian's emotions were a tangled mess. She had been angry at her father for trying to force her into an unwanted marriage, but he was still her father. She could not ignore his deathbed request, regardless of their differences. She was making arrangements to travel back to Philadelphia when there was a knock at her door. Her heart leaped when she saw Kyle standing there, his hat in his hands, looking tired and troubled. "Can we talk?" he asked. She nodded, leading him to the small parlor Mrs. Chen set aside for private conversations. They sat, and for a long moment neither spoke. Finally, Kyle said, "I have been doing a lot of thinking about you, about us, about what happened. I was angry, Lillian. I felt like a fool, like you had been laughing at me the whole time." "I never laughed at you, not once. I know that now. I had time to remember every conversation we had, every moment we shared, and I realized that you were always honest about what mattered. You told me your fears, your hopes, your dreams. You shared your true self with me. The money, the name, those were just details. They did not change who you were as a person. They did not. I am the same woman who fell in love with you, Kyle. I was also afraid," he admitted. "When I learned who you really were, my first thought was that you would leave me. Why would a wealthy heiress stay with a simple rancher? I could never give you the life you were accustomed to, so I pushed you away before you could leave me. I would never leave you. That life I was accustomed to was suffocating me. It meant nothing. You, what we have together, that is what matters." Kyle reached across and took her hands. "I am sorry I reacted the way I did. I was hurt and scared and I lashed out, but I have been miserable these past 2 weeks. Nothing feels right without you. The ranch feels empty. Food has no taste. I cannot sleep. Lillian, whatever you want to be called, I love you. Not your money, not your family name, just you. The woman who loaned money to a stranger. The woman who rode cattle drives and cooked over campfires. The woman who looked at my modest ranch and saw its value. That is who I fell in love with. I love you too, Kyle, so much. And I am sorry I did not trust you with the truth sooner. I was wrong. So we both made mistakes. But if you are still willing, I would still like to marry you. And I want you to know I would choose you either way. Rich or poor, Lillian Lancaster or Lily Lawson, it makes no difference to me. It is you I want, just you." Those words, so simple and sincere, healed something deep inside Lillian. This was what she had been seeking all along, to be chosen for herself, regardless of circumstances. "There is something I need to tell you," she said. "I received a letter today. My father is dying. He is asking for me. I have to go back to Philadelphia." Kyle's face fell. "Of course you do. He is your father. Come with me. I need you, Kyle, and I want you to meet him. I want him to know the man I love, to understand why I made the choices I made." "Are you sure?" A simple cowboy meeting a railroad magnate on his deathbed seems like a recipe for disaster. You are not a simple cowboy. You are an intelligent, capable man who built a successful ranch through hard work and determination. My father will respect that, and if he does not, it does not matter. Because I choose you, Kyle, no matter what anyone else thinks." Kyle smiled. "Then I will come with you. We will face it together." They left for Philadelphia the next day, the train journey a stark contrast to the one Lillian had made months earlier when she fled west. Then, she had been alone and uncertain. Now, she had Kyle by her side, and that made all the difference. The Lancaster mansion in Philadelphia was exactly as Lillian remembered, imposing, elegant, and cold. Kyle stared up at the columned facade with wide eyes. "This is where you grew up?" "Yes. Now you understand why I ran away." They were shown into her father's bedchamber, where Thomas Lancaster lay propped up against pillows, looking frail but still possessing sharp, intelligent eyes. Those eyes took in Kyle's rough clothing and weathered appearance with one sweep. "So," he said in a weak voice, "my daughter returns with a cowboy in tow. Is this your way of rebelling, Lillian?" "No, father. This is my way of choosing my own life. This is Kyle Edwards, the man I love, the man I am going to marry. A cowboy. A rancher. What could he possibly offer you that Gerald Morrison could not? Genuine love, respect, a partnership based on equality rather than ownership." Thomas studied Kyle for a long moment. "What do you have to say for yourself, young man?" Kyle stepped forward, his spine straight despite his nervousness. "Mr. Lancaster, I am not going to pretend I can offer your daughter the material wealth you can provide. My ranch is small, and life there is hard work, but I can promise you that I will love her every day for the rest of my life. I will treat her as an equal partner. And I will work until my last breath to make her happy. You know who she is, what she stands to inherit." "Yes, sir. And I do not care. I fell in love with her when I thought she was a working girl with $3 to her name. Finding out she was wealthy did not change my feelings. I would choose her either way." Something in Thomas Lancaster's expression softened slightly. He looked at his daughter. "You love him?" "Yes, father, more than anything." "And you, young man, you truly do not care about the money?" "No, sir. Though I will not lie and say it would not be useful for expanding the ranch. But I would marry Lillian if she were penniless. It is her I want, not her inheritance." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he surprised them both by laughing, a weak, wheezing sound. "I was like you once, you know. Your mother's family did not approve of me. I was a nobody, building railroads with my own hands. They wanted her to marry into old money, but she chose me and we built an empire together. Father, I did not know that. I had forgotten it myself over the years. Got caught up in maintaining what we built, protecting it, expanding it. I lost sight of what mattered. I was wrong to try to force you to marry Morrison. I see that now. You deserve what your mother and I had, a real partnership, real love." Tears streamed down Lillian's face. "You mean it?" "I do. But I want to make sure this young man understands what he is getting into. Lillian stands to inherit a significant fortune when I am gone. There will be lawyers, businessmen, and opportunists coming out of the woodwork. Can you handle that? Can you protect her from those who would take advantage?" Kyle met the older man's eyes steadily. "I can, sir. I may be a simple rancher, but I am not stupid. I know how to assess character and spot a cheat. I have dealt with cattle thieves and dishonest merchants." "I imagine city swindlers are not much different." Thomas laughed again. "I think you might be right. Very well, you have my blessing, but I have one condition." "What is that?" Lillian asked. "The ranch. This double E, I want to invest in it, help you expand, build it into something significant. Not as charity, but as a business venture. Kyle, you clearly have a good head for ranching. With proper capital, you could build something impressive, and it would give Lillian something productive to do with her money rather than just letting it sit in a bank." Kyle looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Lancaster, I appreciate the offer, but I do not want your money. I have always made my own way. It is not my money I am offering. It is Lillian's. It is her inheritance, and she can use it however she likes. I am simply suggesting a use that honors both of your strengths." Lillian looked at Kyle. "We do not have to decide now, but Father has a point. The money is going to be mine regardless. Would it not be better to invest it in something meaningful, something we build together, rather than letting bankers and lawyers control it?" Kyle thought about it. "When you put it that way, I suppose it makes sense. But it has to be a true partnership. I will not have people thinking I married you for your money." "Anyone who spends 5 minutes with you will know better," Lillian said. "You are the most honorable man I know." They stayed in Philadelphia for a week. long enough to see Thomas Lancaster's condition stabilize. The doctors said he might have months, perhaps even years, if he took care of himself. Lillian suspected that having something to look forward to, her wedding and the prospect of grandchildren, had given him a reason to fight. They married in a simple ceremony at a small church in San Antonio, with Mrs. Chen, Greta, and Kyle's ranch hands in attendance. Lillian wore a simple white dress, not the elaborate wedding gown that had been prepared for her marriage to Gerald Morrison. Kyle wore his best suit, and when he said his vows, his voice was strong and sure. "I promise to love you for who you are, not what you have. I promise to be your partner in all things. I promise to choose you every day for the rest of my life." Lillian's vows were equally heartfelt. "I promise to be honest with you always. I promise to work beside you, to share your dreams and help you build them. I promise to love you with my whole heart, now and forever." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Kyle kissed her with a joy that made everyone in the church smile. They returned to the Double E as a married couple, and Lillian threw herself into ranch life with enthusiasm. With her father's investment, they were able to expand the herd, improve the buildings, and hire more hands. But Kyle insisted on maintaining the character of the ranch, refusing to turn it into some palatial estate. It remained a working ranch where everyone contributed and earned their keep. Lillian proved to be an excellent businesswoman, using her education to handle accounts, negotiate contracts, and market their cattle. Kyle handled the day-to-day operations, and together they made a formidable team. The Double E grew into one of the most respected ranches in the region, known for fair dealing and quality cattle. Mrs. Chen came to visit often, and eventually she sold her boarding house and moved into a small cottage on the ranch property, helping Rosa with cooking and household management. She became like family, a beloved elder who offered wisdom and support. The first winter of their marriage was hard, with a particularly brutal cold snap that tested the herd. But working together, Kyle and Lillian got through it, and the experience only strengthened their bond. They learned to rely on each other, to communicate openly, and to face challenges as a team. In the spring of 1880, Lillian discovered she was pregnant. Kyle was beside himself with joy and worry, alternating between excitement and fear that something might go wrong. Lillian assured him that she was strong and healthy, and that women had been having babies for thousands of years. Their first child, a son they named Thomas after Lillian's father, was born in October. Thomas Lancaster traveled to Texas to meet his grandson, looking healthier than he had in years. Holding the baby in his arms, he told Kyle, "You have given my daughter a better life than I ever could have. Thank you for that." "She gave me a better life too," Kyle replied. "We saved each other." Over the years, the Double E continued to thrive. Lillian and Kyle had 4 more children, 2 daughters and 2 sons. They raised them to understand the value of hard work, honesty, and choosing one's own path in life. Lillian never regretted her decision to leave Philadelphia and her life of wealth. The Double E gave her something far more valuable, a life built on love, genuine partnership, and honest work. She watched her children grow up riding horses across the Texas hills, free and happy in a way she had never been as a child. Kyle became a respected figure in the ranching community, known for his integrity and his innovative approaches to cattle management. But he never forgot that day in the general store when a kind woman had offered him a loan when he needed it most. He made it a point to help others when he could, extending credit or offering work to those who were down on their luck. Years later, when their children were grown and starting families of their own, Kyle and Lillian would sit on the porch of the ranch house in the evenings, watching the sun set over the land they had built together. "You ever miss your old life?" Kyle asked one evening. Lillian laughed. "Not for a single moment. That life was never really mine. This is real. You are real. What we built together is real. I would not trade it for anything. I still cannot believe you chose me, a simple cowboy over all that wealth and comfort. You are not a simple cowboy, and you never were. You are the man who saw me for who I really was, the man who loved me either way, the man who chose me when I had nothing. That is worth more than all the railroads in the world." Kyle took her hand the same way he had that day when he proposed. "I meant what I said, you know, then and now. I would choose you either way, rich or poor, young or old. In good times and hard times, always you. And I will always choose you." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell, surrounded by the life they had created through love, trust, and hard work. The double E stood as a testament to what could be built when two people chose each other freely, without pretense or deception, and committed to facing life's challenges together. Their grandchildren would eventually inherit the ranch, and they would tell the story of how their grandmother had run away from wealth to find something more valuable, and how their grandfather had been the kind of man who could see past appearances to the person beneath. It became a family legend, passed down through generations, a reminder that the most valuable things in life could not be bought or sold, only earned through genuine connection and freely given love. Thomas Lancaster lived another 10 years, long enough to see his daughter build a life of meaning and purpose. On his deathbed, he told her, "You were right to run away. You found what your mother and I had, what I had almost destroyed by forgetting its value. I am proud of you, Lillian. Proud of the life you built, the woman you became." After his death, Lillian inherited his fortune as expected. She and Kyle used it to establish schools and hospitals in the region, to help struggling ranchers get on their feet, and to improve conditions for workers throughout Texas. They believed wealth carried responsibility, and they worked to ensure their good fortune benefited the community that had welcomed them. As they aged, their love deepened. The passion of youth transformed into something richer and more enduring, a partnership so complete that they could often communicate without words. They knew each other's thoughts, anticipated each other's needs, and found joy in simple daily rituals like morning coffee on the porch or evening walks along the river. When they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, the entire town of San Antonio turned out for the party. Cowboys and society ladies, ranch hands and businessmen, all came to honor the couple who had proven that love could bridge any divide. At the celebration, their eldest son Thomas asked Kyle what the secret was to such a lasting marriage. Kyle looked across the room at Lillian, who was laughing with Mrs. Chen, and smiled. "The secret is choosing each other every single day. Your mother could have had an easier life. She gave up wealth and comfort to be with me. And I could have let my pride stand in the way when I learned who she really was. But we chose each other. Not once, but every day for 50 years. And given the chance, I would choose her again." Later that night, as they prepared for bed in the ranch house they had shared for half a century, Lillian looked at the simple silver ring with the turquoise stone that she still wore, now alongside a gold wedding band. It had never been replaced with something more expensive or elaborate. She did not want anything else. "You remember when you gave me this?" she asked Kyle. "Of course, under the stars after the cattle drive. I was terrified you would say no. I almost did, because I knew I had to tell you the truth first. Best decision I ever made, being honest with you. Best decision I ever made was forgiving you and seeing past my wounded pride to what really mattered." They lay down together, her head on his shoulder, the same way they had every night for 50 years. Despite the decades that had passed, Despite the gray hair and the wrinkles, they still felt that same spark they had experienced when they first met in that general store. "I love you, Lily," Kyle whispered. "I love you, Kyle. Always." The Double E Ranch continued to thrive under the management of their children and grandchildren, each generation adding their own innovations while staying true to the principles Kyle and Lillian had established. The ranch became known throughout Texas and beyond, not just for its quality cattle but for the family behind it, a family built on the radical idea that love mattered more than social status or wealth. Kyle Edwards lived to the age of 83, still riding his horse around the property almost until the end. When he finally passed, peacefully in his sleep with Lillian beside him, the entire state mourned. His funeral was attended by hundreds, from the humblest ranch hand to the governor himself. Lillian lived another 5 years, spending her time with her children and grandchildren, telling them stories of the old days, of cattle drives and frontier towns, of taking a chance on love when everything seemed stacked against them. She spoke often of Kyle, and everyone who visited her could see that her love for him had not diminished with his passing. On a quiet morning in the spring of 1935, Lillian Lancaster Edwards passed away in her sleep, in the same bedroom she had shared with Kyle for over 5 decades. She was buried beside him on a hill overlooking the Double E, where they could watch over the land they had loved together forever. Their eldest granddaughter, also named Lillian, found a letter among her grandmother's things, written years earlier but never sent. It was addressed to Gerald Morrison, the man she had been supposed to marry back in Philadelphia. The letter read, "I want to thank you. By being exactly the wrong person for me, you helped me find the courage to seek out the right one. I hope you found happiness in your life as I found mine. I married a cowboy, raised a family, built a ranch, and lived a life full of genuine love and partnership. It was not the life anyone expected for me, but it was exactly the life I needed. I have no regrets." The family kept that letter, framing it and hanging it in the ranch house as a reminder of the choices that had shaped their family's destiny. It hung alongside photographs of Kyle and Lillian throughout the years, visual proof of a love that had started with a simple act of kindness and had grown into something that transformed lives and inspired generations. The story of the wealthy woman who disguised herself as poor and the humble cowboy who said he would choose her either way became a legend in Texas, told and retold, adapted and embellished. But those who had known them personally always insisted that no embellishment was necessary. The truth was remarkable enough. 2 people who saw past appearances and social expectations to find genuine love, who built a life based on mutual respect and partnership, and who proved that the most valuable things in life could never be bought or sold. The Double E Ranch still operates today, run by the 6th generation of Edwards' descendants. The original ranch house has been preserved as a museum, filled with artifacts from Kyle and Lillian's life together. Visitors come from around the world to see the place where such an extraordinary love story unfolded, to walk the land they walked, to stand on the porch where they shared their evening conversations, to understand how 2 people from completely different worlds created something beautiful together. In the museum, there is a display case containing 2 items: a simple silver ring with a turquoise stone and a worn envelope containing $25, the loan repayment that had brought Kyle and Lillian together. Beside them is a placard with a quote from Kyle, given during an interview late in his life. "People ask me if I was intimidated when I learned my wife was an heiress. The truth is, it did not matter. I fell in love with her character, her kindness, her courage. Those things had nothing to do with money, and I would have chosen her either way, rich or poor, because she was the other half of my soul. That is what real love is, choosing someone not for what they can give you, but for who they are. Everything else is just details. And beneath that, a quote from Lillian from her own interview years later. I gave up a fortune to find love, and I got the better end of the bargain. Kyle gave me something money could never buy, a life of purpose, partnership, and genuine affection. I was Lillian Lancaster, the heiress, for 18 years. But I was Lillian Edwards, the rancher's wife, for over 60 years. That is who I really was. That is who I was always meant to be. Their story endures because it speaks to something fundamental in the human heart, the desire to be loved for ourselves rather than our circumstances, the hope that genuine connection can transcend social barriers, and the belief that when two people truly choose each other, they can build something that outlasts them both. The sun still sets over the Double E Ranch every evening, painting the Texas sky in shades of gold and crimson. The cattle still graze on the hills, the horses still run in the pastures, and the land still holds the imprint of two people who loved it and each other with everything they had. And if you stand very quietly on the porch of the old ranch house at twilight, locals will tell you that you can sometimes still feel their presence. Two souls who chose each other against all odds and built a love story that became legend.